It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And good morning to the John Fredericks Radio Network all across the United States of America, with stations in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Virginia, Georgia, and Tennessee, and of course, the John Fredericks Radio app. You can listen to us all across the United States of America. You can watch us on YouTube. You can reach me on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, Michael P. Leahy. So let's get right to it. It's time for the morning rundown for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, brought to you by the Glock Store, glockstore.com, located just a few miles from the airport, right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Here we go, the morning rundown for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. We've got a big rundown. Number one, 5 days, 1 hour, 54 minutes, and 30 seconds until Donald J. Trump is inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. But who's counting? I am. Everyone in our listening audience is counting. Anybody who is sane is counting. Number two, the TikTok decision is going to be handed down sometime this week by the Supreme Court. Kevin O'Leary was on CNN last night talking about he and Frank McCourt are the only two people that have a bid to purchase TikTok. We'll see how that all plays out. Number three, did you watch this? Pete Hegseth dominated his confirmation hearings in the Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing yesterday. And the Democrat senators, well, we've got some clips. They look like total hacks. And if you are a person of common sense, you came away convicted that Pete Hegseth is going to be a fantastic Secretary of Defense, and he's going to get confirmed. Number four, the Tennessee General Assembly, which, by the way, is just a stone's throw from our studios here in downtown Nashville. They held an organizational meeting yesterday. They're continuing today, and then they'll break and come back. This is where they set the rules. The rules. And by the way, one of the rules, Justin Jones in the House of Representatives. Justin Jones, that guy is going to be on the front row so the Speaker Sexton can keep his eye on him. How about that? All right. So we'll have more on that. There looks like there'll be a special session going on 2 weeks from today to deal with universal school choice, and I'm told flood relief for East Tennessee. Number five, the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. yesterday passed a bill to keep men out of women's sports. Tom Pappert will talk about that. What's the United States Senate going to do? And, of course, what's the attitude of the Tennessee House of Representatives and the Tennessee State Senate? They're all for that ban. Number six, the last gasp of the Biden administration. Joe Biden sent out a letter today talking about all the great things he'd accomplished. He's going to address the nation tonight. He's doing the last things that he can, and they're all terrible, awful, stupid. Oh, P.S., he's crooked. His son's crooked. How many pardons are coming? Number seven, Todd Bensman. Speaking of the last days, the great Todd Bensman will be with us at the bottom of the hour to talk about this last-minute rush going from illegal immigrants trying to get through in the next 5 days into the United States. Number eight, former ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands, is going to be with us in the second hour to talk about Donald Trump's attempt to acquire Greenland. She was Donald Trump's ambassador to Denmark, for 4 years. Did a really great job. And then finally, Phil Klein will join us in the next segment to talk about the Jack Smith resignation and the report he issued going out the door, which is more hackery. So there you go. There is the morning rundown for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, brought to you by our friends at the Glock Store. Now, this is where I talk about the Glock Store, and I've got some exciting news for you. One of the things that people love about the Glock Store, glockstore.com, is their recurring gun giveaway sweepstakes. Just since last October, 8 lucky people have won the factory stock Glock of their choice just for entering the sweepstakes. Well, today starts, wait for it, sweepstakes number 9. They've got a great name for it, the abominable sweepstakes. I guess it's because it's winter, right? The entry period starts today, January 15th, and ends on Wednesday, January 29th. That's 2 weeks at midnight. Short entry periods mean less entries, which means there's a better chance that you could be a winner. Go to Glockstore.com for that. You really should enter right now. To find out how, just go to Glockstore.com /TAS. That's TAS, as in the abominable sweepstakes. No purchase is necessary to enter, and there's even a way to be auto-entered multiple times. Oh, the more times you enter, better chance you have. That's my friend Lenny McGill giving back to the Glock community by giving away Glocks. By the way, there is a Glock community out there, and if you're listening, and if you own a Glock, or you want to own a Glock, and you're part of that Glock community, that's a Glock Store thing. We're sure proud to be sponsored by them. That's Glockstore.com /TAS for your chance to win the factory stock Glock of your choice. Glockstore.com. Love those guys. All right, Pete Hegseth. I got to start off with this clip. Some genius put together the left-wing liberal ladies of haranguing. Okay, and I think we've got here, and they mixed up the audio. There's a video that we're going to play, but the audio is Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, and I think Senator Slotkin of Michigan. Put them all together. Now we're going to play this thing. The audio is hilarious. And it's just, there's old Pete sitting up there, calm, cool, collected, having done his 5 sets of 47 push-ups in the morning. Looking cool, calm, and collected. And, I mean, on radio, you can't watch this, but the haranguing will come across. So here we go, a masterpiece of editing, putting together all of the complaints of these 4 left-wing liberal ladies who are in the United States Senate.
Yes, are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe, just like.
No, that was Tammy Duckworth was the fourth one, not Slotkin. Boy, she was a haranguer in chief. Oh my goodness. And there he is just sitting calmly, you know, and they just go off on these crazy. It doesn't look. We talked about. The Democrats have lost it. They think it's 2018. They think they can get away with these haranguing things where they're just, you know, just a smear, not allowing Hegseth to answer. Just kind of crazy. Here, I want to play a couple of clips here that will illustrate this. Let me just jump forward, actually, because this is one of my favorite. Clip 5, if you can, Patrick. Can you jump forward to clip 5? This is Pete Hegseth being... And everybody laughed at the way Elizabeth Warren framed this. Senator from Massachusetts. So go clip 5, Hegseth and Warren.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one. Let us just...
Oh, harangue. You're going to force your general to not go back to industry for 10 years. Well, he's not been in industry. He's not going to go back to industry. And instead of just saying it that way, his deadpan, I'm not a general, Senator. Boom! Place. And she can't take the ridicule. She looks like an idiot. All the Democrats look like complete idiots. When we come back, someone who's not an idiot, a very smart guy, Phil Klein, one of the leading legal experts, going to talk about the last gasp of Jack Smith as he shuts the door behind him and leaves in shame the persecutor of Donald J. Trump. Back after this.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of The Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. We are delighted to welcome to our newsmaker line one of the leading legal scholars in the country, former Attorney General for the state of Kansas, now a professor of law at Liberty University, Phil Klein. Welcome, Phil. Great to have you on this morning.
Good to be with you, Michael.
Well, Jack Smith. Jack Smith, who, by the way, is a Harvard Law School graduate, undergrad at, he's an upstate New Yorker, as it turns out. He went to SUNY, State University of New York at Oneonta. I know I had a lot of my friends who went there. But Smith really has been a disaster as a special persecutor. That's the word I'm using for him, of Donald J. Trump. He has resigned in disgrace, but on the way out, one of his reports has been released, and it looks like to me I could have been a contender. What's your take on it, Phil Klein?
Well, Michael, for what Merrick Garland hired him for, he actually did the job, and that was to contort the law to justify a persecution of President Trump during an election year in an effort to defeat him in a reelect. And his so-called report, in which he claims he would be able to prove crimes by the former president, is really admission that he didn't have the evidence. Buried in all of the rhetoric, you will see that he says Trump I could not find evidence, despite tens of millions of dollars, and despite years of investigation by the J6 committee and by Jack Smith, and despite multiple media claims by them, parroted by the media, that Trump was involved in violence. He says, I could not bring together evidence that Trump was fully, he puts the word fully in, which is not a legal term, fully responsible for the violence, whatever that means. He presents no evidence President Trump.
Hold it. I missed that.
Organize. What's that?
I missed that. He said, well, I couldn't find evidence that he was fully responsible for the violence on Jay's. He actually wrote that?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
And he has no evidence that President Trump conspired to create the violence, contributed in any fashion to the violence, spoke to those who might have engaged in violence, arranged for weapons to be present to pursue violence. Nothing. Zero evidence. And then what he says, this is quite remarkable. He says, I could win conviction because Trump was not fully responsible for the violence, but he benefited from what happened on J6. Now,
okay, hold it. He wasn't responsible for it, but he benefited from what others did. That's his argument?
Yes. And think about how that would apply to the rest of us. If we ever benefited by the wrongdoing of another person, even though we were not engaged in it, we didn't plan it, we didn't even know it was going to happen, we also could be charged with a crime. It is insane. He is just making an emotional argument to the American people who were repulsed by the violence on January 6th. That's all this is a political document. It was political actions by a political prosecutor. This is the prosecutor who went after former Governor McDonnell in Virginia. And his conviction and legal theories were reversed 8-0 by a Supreme Court.
In my book, that's a unanimous reversal. It's pretty bad.
Right.
Pretty bad record for this Jack Smith character.
Absolutely. And it was the same type of thing. He had contorted and twisted the law to justify a prosecution of a Republican. And the Supreme Court unanimously, basically what the Supreme Court said in that case is if we interpreted the law that way, then democracy could not function because anybody who tried to influence government would violate that law.
Phil, let me ask you, I know you're the legal expert, but you also understand the political process. I'm going to throw a question out for you to think about just for a moment. Would Donald Trump have won re-election this time around in 2024 had the Department of Justice and the state of New York and Fulton County, Georgia, had they not mounted all of these ridiculous politicized lawfare lawsuits against Donald Trump, had they just done nothing? How do you think Donald Trump would have done in the 2024 election?
Oh, well, I think it would be entirely different. Now, we're probably talking about, and this is a large portion of the electorate, but probably talking about 10% of the electorate that might have a different perspective of President Trump than it does now. If it wasn't for, it's extraordinary what they did with media, with censorship, with the deep state, and you know, we go back, and Zuckerberg's not reformed, by the way. Zuckerberg's just playing favorites.
He's playing favorites, yeah. Well, you certainly would know that on Zuckerberg because of all the great work you did to document how the $400 million 2020 money spent by Zuckerberg basically subverted the role of the electoral administrators in innumerable swing states and swing state counties.
That's right. That's right. And Mike, if Zuckerberg was sincere as the donor to all of these leftist election nonprofits, he would demand an immediate accounting of how his money was used, the purpose for that money, and he'd release it to the public. So and we would see the leftist conspiracy to violate law.
But haven't they really, all of this leftist lawsuits, all the leftist conspiracy to violate the law that were successful in 2020 have really, really backfired in 2024. Would you agree with that?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
And here's why. We are dealing with even a much bigger battle about the soul of America than you see in a presidential election. We have higher education institutions with endowed professors funded by foreign adversaries. We have curriculum that is contrary to, it's anti-American in many ways, what is being taught, what is being discussed. We have business schools that don't believe in capitalism.
Not at all. As a graduate of one of the top business schools, I can attest to that. I mean, they're basically coming out as little Chinese Communist Party technocrats and not free market capitalists. That's what it looks like to me.
And, you know, it's all of this that has resulted in, if you were to take, and they did, they took a poll, and I'm forgetting the age group, but it's the younger generation of students about the assassination in broad daylight of a CEO of a health insurance firm, and half of them believe the violence was justified.
Yeah, they're missing some key elements about right and wrong and the rule of law, aren't they?
Absolutely, and what the purpose of government is, and just basic factual truth, not only moral,
but factual
truth.
I have a last question for you about Jack Smith
Yeah.
and his report. He's resigned. I don't know what kind of gig he's going to get now, but my question to you is: should Jack Smith be prosecuted by the Trump Department of Justice for the abuse of his position that spent all that time to come up with this nothing burger of a report?
Well, as I look at it now, no. Unless there are clear indications of violations of law by Mr. Smith, and we don't have that. But I would say all of this needs to be investigated so that the true story can be revealed. And the danger that a Jack Smith and a Merrick Garland presented to America and equal equality before the law needs to be revealed.
Would you favor, we got 30 seconds here, would you favor a Judiciary Committee Senate hearing subpoenaing Jack Smith to testify about his conduct? Yes or no? Would you agree with that or not?
Well, absolutely, as long as they get the documents.
Oh, there you go.
Get the documents to hold them accountable.
Phil Klein, great legal scholar, professor of law at Liberty University, good friend. Phil, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
When we come back, Tom Pappert with an inside report about the House bill that says boys can't compete in girls' sports. Hope it becomes law. Back after this.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Just 5 days, count them, until Donald J. Trump is the 47th President of the United States. But our very good friend, Todd Bensman, Senior Fellow with the Center for Immigration Studies and an expert on all things related to illegal immigration, has some troubling news for us about these last 5 days and what's likely to happen in the first year of the Trump administration. Todd, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's always great to have you on, Todd, because I always learn so much. I saw you put this out, and I thought, really? So the United Nations has a plan to undermine Trump's efforts to build a wall, deport illegal aliens, particularly criminals, etc. Tell us about. I read this. I said, no, this can't be true. Turns out, it is true. Tell us the details, Todd.
It's certainly surprising, but we know that the United Nations, in conjunction with 200 plus NGOs, have been plying the migrants all along the migration trails in Latin America.
Can you just, Todd, if you just for a moment, for our listeners, because you're so familiar with this, you use the term NGOs. Tell our listeners what an NGO is.
An NGO is a nonprofit organization in this context that deals with migration, migrant support, and advocacy. So there are hundreds of these organizations that have grown very fat with profit, even though they're nonprofits, to aid and assist and abet the mass migration to our border. In Latin America, a lot of them are U.S. based, a lot of other ones are international, but the UN put together an organization of them, a coordinated group, a conglomeration of NGOs and about 15 UN agencies together in Latin America in 2019. And every year they've been spending, $1.5 billion handing out food, supplies, cash debit cards. I know you've heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Cash debit cards, transportation, shelter, basically supporting the migration and maybe even incentivizing some of that to our border, paid for by U.S. taxpayers, predominantly by U.S. taxpayers. And I think that's the part that really sort of gets...
So explain how that works. When you say paid for, it's the UN giving out these debit cards to illegal aliens who want to enter the United States. And they go down to South America and Central America, give these cards out. They go north, right? How is it that U.S. taxpayers are funding this?
Right, in multiple ways. For one thing, the UNHCR and the IOM, those are the two big heavy hitters in the UN, get the vast majority of their funding from U.S. appropriations, approved by Congress, approved by the White House, State Department, and then the NGOs that work with them get their money in several different ways. They get a piece of the money that the UN gets from us,
mm-hmm.
and they get money directly from the State Department in the form of grants or USAID.
So they're double dipping from the American taxpayer, basically.
Either way, I mean, they're just being showered with U.S. tax money. That's how this whole thing works.
I love the way you described it. These groups get showered by U.S. tax money to bring illegal aliens in and pay for all of their expenses in various ways. Just for our listeners, I think they might be familiar with some of these groups. Catholic Charities is one of them. HIAS, Lutheran, what is it, the Lutheran Immigration Service or something like that?
Right. Well, there's a lot going on. First of all, the piece that I have up in the Daily Mail,
mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, the Daily Wire. Sorry, I write for the Daily Mail too, but in this case, it's the Daily Wire.
By the way, based right here in Nashville, Tennessee, run by our very good friends, the Daily Wire.
That's right. Uh, well, I link to a complete list of the 230 NGOs that are part of this. So you
Got
can
it.
go in there, scroll around, just hit the link in the piece, and you can scroll around. The Catholic Charities and they're two different things. You know, those guys work on our side of the border mostly. These other NGOs work on the south side of the border, all the way into Latin America, 15
Ah,
different countries.
okay. But I'm
But
sure they talk to each other, right?
a lot of them are religious, U.S. based religious organizations that work down there. They're listed. Their appropriations, the amount of money they're receiving is in the document. I mean, it's all there for the public to see. There's no secrets here. I mean, there's some secrets here, but the basics of what you need to know are there. The point of writing about this now, though, is that with Trump coming into office, that organization of UN and NGOs that work in Latin America have just put out their latest budget document. Uh, and they put it out after the election, so they knew Trump was going to be in office and trying to shut down the flows. And they're still looking at $1.4 billion to support all of those migrants to keep the pressure on the U.S. border, maybe to induce failure. This is my speculation, to failure, or just to keep the pressure on, not to give up, to keep 2.5 million migrants, foreign nationals in all those countries sustained and on the trail, pushing ever forward, or to just wait out the Trump administration and hope a friendlier Democrat gets in office in 4 years. The point is that it's still going on. Their line items are very interesting. $260 million for debit cards, cash and envelopes, all of the usual things, the things that sort of enrage Republican members of Congress mainly. This has already started up a lot of talk. Like, what are we going to do about this U.S. funding? Do we want U.S. taxpayer money under Trump, with Republicans controlling both chambers as well, continuing to be used this way? That's a legitimate public policy debate. And I think that you're already starting to see people like Lance Gooden. I quote him in my piece. I think this is news. He says he's bringing back a bill to defund the UN. And I think he's going to get a lot more friends in Congress on that than he did the first time when the chambers were split and you had a Democrat in the White House. So I think you're going to see some movement on that issue as well, but we'll see. It'll be very interesting. The point I'm trying to make is, hey, those guys are still operating down there. They're still planning to spend a ton of money, U.S. taxpayer money, sustaining and supporting migrants who wish that they could cross the southern border.
Yeah, and what's fascinating to me about this, Todd, is, I mean, this is information that's out there to be discovered. You went out and you found it. You reported it. Nobody else really took the time to report on this basic stuff, and it reveals what I think is a real problem, which is the United Nations, which we fund, I don't know, half of their funding. I don't know what the number is, but a lot comes from...
Way more than that.
More than half comes from the United States of America. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
They are actively, as a policy, at the highest level, they are working to undermine American sovereignty by keeping this flow of illegal aliens coming. It seems to me that this is the kind of thing that ought to be brought to the attention of the Doge boys, right? Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Have you had an opportunity to present this to Elon or Vivek?
No, I mean, I put the information out there. I hope it makes its way to decision makers, but I don't have any personal relationship with those guys. But I hope that my reporting is read. It is true that this is readily available. It's all online. They publish their budget document every year. I write about it every year. I think I'm the only one who really kind of is aware that they're publishing what they plan to do. And in the documents, they lay out that they are well aware that huge numbers of the people that they are aiding and assisting with our money are on their way to our border to cross it illegally and plan to cross half a dozen other countries' borders illegally too. They are fully aware of it, and that's, I think, the problem. I mean, we all expect the UNHCR and the IOM to,
Okay, so tell everybody what that stands for.
United Nations High Commission on Refugees.
By the way, let me just say for a moment, it sounds like something from the 19th century, right? The United Nations High Commission on whatever.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a bunch of bad actors at the United Nations, seems to me.
This is their job. I mean, it's their mission set. Okay, granted, in Africa and Asia, there are plenty of populations that are displaced, but in our hemisphere, there needs to be an extra awareness that when they aid and assist those migrants, that there's an outcome that is objectionable to a lot of people in the United States. We just elected a guy for president based on this. People don't like this in the United States. So, I mean, this is what they do. This is what they do. This is their job. We get that. I'm just saying that it's definitely a legitimate debate to have and objections to be lodged about how they're doing it in our hemisphere and what the outcome is of that. And maybe there ought to be some defunding. Maybe there ought to be some accountability or transparency. Maybe they ought to be rolled back because the American people don't like this. They don't like
Have
this.
you had an opportunity to speak about this and present this to any senior members of the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, and how have they responded?
I mean, I've been in touch with staffers in the House whose principals are interested in this. Lance Gooden, I mentioned him already, and they gave me a statement saying he's going to reintroduce his defund the UN bill as soon as possible. And he has a lot of co-signers on that as well. Andy Biggs, a lot of members of the Freedom Caucus. This has been an issue for them for
a long time,
for 3 years now. And I think now the timing is right for them to bring this forward because it's a trifecta now. So the whole playing field is very different than when they first got interested in this. So, and you've got a president who I think is well aware of this issue as well. But although I haven't heard him talk very much about it.
Well, I think we need to get this in front of the boss very soon, and Stephen Miller and all those guys, because when they look at your great reporting, they're going to see action needs to be taken to stop all this stuff. Todd Bensman, our very good friend, a great reporter, leading expert in immigration issues. Todd, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Always learn something great from Todd Bensman. Well, something great to act upon. Back with more on the Hegseth hearing yesterday. We got the highlights. Oh, my goodness. Back after this.
My fellow Americans, I have to tell you about my good friends at D.T. McCall & Sons. They have furniture and appliances and a lot more. They've been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years, and they're not going to rip you off. No hidden charges, no delivery charges, no charges for all of the crazy things. These are sick people at the lumber yards. These are very sick people. They charge you for cords and hoses and haul off. They charge you for all of these things. They call them hidden charges. It's the type of surprise that you don't want to see. It's like an October surprise, but it's worse. D.T. McCall & Sons, they're not going to do that. They're great people. They're going to give you a great deal. With locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, D.T. McCall & Sons will give you the deal of your life. Check them out today or go to dtmccalls.com.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Hey, I'm Governor Bill Lee, and I want to talk to you about an important education bill in Tennessee. Everyone knows that education has the power to change the trajectory of a child's life forever. And anyone who's raised a child knows that each one's different in their educational needs, and their learning styles, and their talents. The fact is, parents know their own children best. They know what's best for their education and their future. That's why I'm here to talk to you about Tennessee's Education Freedom Act. It empowers parents across our state to use their tax dollars to choose the school that allows their child to thrive, regardless of zip code or income, all while making significant investments in Tennessee's public education. If you want to learn how you can help make the Education Freedom Act a reality in Tennessee, go to educationfreedomact.com and write or call your state representatives. It's educationfreedomact.com.
This ad is paid for by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Okay, so we promised that we would play the lowlights of the Democrat senators with their hair on fire, acting like a bunch of seventh graders, not asking any serious questions, but just doing gotcha stuff. Look, I think they could do this all day. Let them do it. All it does is illustrate to the American people that the Democrat Party is not a party of solutions at all. I mean, they're so 2018. They still think it's 2018. They haven't moved the clock forward 7 years as they should have. Okay, so let's go to this is a clip. Clip one. He's talking about Angus King. Was trying to ask him some questions. He's the, quote, independent. He's really a Democrat from Maine. And Hegseth handled him easily. Here we go. Clip one.
The way we fought our wars back when the Geneva Conventions were written are a lot different than the asymmetric, non-conventional environment of counterinsurgency that I confronted in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was the senior counterinsurgency instructor in Afghanistan. My job was to understand how the Taliban and Al-Qaeda operated so that NATO units coming in could be informed of what was happening. They knew our rules of engagement, and when they were more restrictive, they took advantage of them, and it put our men and women in a more dangerous and difficult place.
And you believe
For future wars we fight, we need to have someone atop the Pentagon, sir, who understands how those ripple effects
Well, I just want to understand your position. Your position is torture's okay. Is that correct? Waterboarding, torture is no longer prohibited given the circumstances of whatever war we're in. Is that correct?
Senator, that is not what I said. I've never been party to torture. We are a country that fights by the rule of law, and our men and women always do. And yet we have too many people here in air-conditioned offices that like to point fingers at the guys in dark and dangerous places, the gals in helicopters in enemy territory who are doing things that people in Washington, D.C. would never dare to do, or send, in many cases.
In one of your interviews, you said they're willing to do this. You're talking about Donald Trump and Senator Cruz. They're willing to do something like waterboarding if it's going to keep us safe. Are you okay with waterboarding?
Senator, the law of the land is that waterboarding is not legal.
So by the way, let me just say, look, do you see what they're trying to do? When did you stop beating your wife? Aren't you bad? Aren't you bad? And he didn't take the bait. And he answered respectfully, calmly, collectively, and very coolly. He just mopped the floor with him. Okay, clip two. Got to play this about his attitude about generals. And the proliferation of generals. Clip 2, about comment from Hegseth about World War II. And now.
Loading. What are you going to do about that?
Senator, we're going to address that. We won World War II with 7 4-star generals. Today we have 44 4-star generals. There's an inverse relationship between the size of staffs and victory on the battlefield. We don't need more bureaucracy at the top. We need more warfighters empowered at the bottom. So it's going to be my job, working with those that we hire and those inside the administration, to identify those places where fat can be cut so it can go toward lethality.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, again, warfighters, lethality. Man, I did not realize how good Pete Hegseth is and in handling all this. It was just fantastic. Here we go. Another clip, clip 3, talking about a soldier losing his rifle versus a general losing a war.
Because everybody in this room knows, if you're a rifleman and you lose your rifle, they're throwing the book at you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a general who loses a war, you get a promotion. That's not going to happen in Donald Trump's Pentagon.
Okay, let me stop. Boom. As Stephen K. Bannon would say. Boom. One last attempt by a loathsome Democrat to trap Pete Hegseth. He didn't fall for it. Senator Peters from Michigan, a total non-entity and a Democrat. Clip 4.
I don't know of any corporate board of directors that would hire a CEO for a major company if they came and said, you know, I supervised 100 people before. They'd ask you, well, what kind of experiences you had? We need innovation. Can you give me an experience or your actual experience of driving innovation in an organization? Give me an example of where you have done that.
Oh my goodness, Senator, absolutely. At Concerned Veterans for America, we created the Fixing Veterans Healthcare Task Force, a bipartisan task force that never been done before, to create policy, to drive policy change on Capitol Hill that organizations fought ferociously against. We got the VA Accountability Act passed and the Mission Act passed in a way that a nonprofit of our size, veterans organization, has never done.
Okay, stop right there. So he answers the question, knocks it out of the park, and he basically, the Democrat senator there, Peters, a non-entity. Okay, that's enough. Let's go. Let me go to my other tack point. Not working, guys. Pete Hegseth. Get ready to say it. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Hey, after the break, former ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands. She's fantastic. Talking about Trump's acquisition of Greenland. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Back after this.